Hello people! Our facade from the last episode needs some gear, like windows, doors, a roof and other stuff. Also, the facade and the road section can stand on their own, so we need a base for them. This episode will be all about building those elements, some from commercial kits and other from scratch. So, let's get started. As you see, our sidewalk is at the same height as the road. We need to elevate it. For this, I used 3 mm balsa stripes. I glued the stripes with some medium CA. I always take longer stripes than needed. Now, it's time to cut the excess away and finish them with sanding. Then, I took a piece of 1 mm cardboard and glued both elements on it using medium CA. This CA gives you about 1 second of time to correct the position. The excess cardboard was then cut to shape with a hobby knife and finished with sanding. Now we have a completed road element. I framed the whole facade with 5 mm balsa from the back. Then I positioned it on 30 mm isolation board and drawed all the lines. The cutting was done with a big alpha blade. Do multiple passes and always try to keep the knife perpendicular to the surface. Of course, a hot wire cutter would be great here, but I wanted to show you that with a little patience it can be done without fancy stuff. Then a lot of PVA was applied to the balsa stripes and I put the facade on the board. The facade was not perfectly straight, so I used a lot of pins to make it straight. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot. The thing here is simple. If you put some pins, the piece will return in a bent position. If you use many of them, you can fight against very strong bending forces. After some careful sanding, it was time to do the roof cut. Okay, this angle is too steep. Now we are talking. I carefully transferred the mark to the other side. Be precise and always try to make things even. First, I roughly cutted the board with a kitchen knife. The blade is strong and without bending you can do those tasks easily. Then I placed the piece to the edge of the table and used the edge of the table for one guide and the edge of the facade for the other. Try this method, it works perfectly. At the end, I filled the hole with the cutted piece. I used PVA and pins again. Always take away the excess PVA to avoid any hard spots later. At the bottom, some balsa and foam was added to meet the other piece that you will see in a moment. Our sidewalk / road piece needs some elevation too. Again, 30 mm isolation board was used. First, I marked the shape on the foam. The shape was then roughly cutted with the kitchen knife. More than you cut, less sanding you need. But be careful not to cut too much. Then the section was glued on with PVA and pins again. After drying, some quick test fitting. It looks good to me. And now, sanding time. It was done outside, so I didn't film it, but it's always a straight piece of wood with 120 grit sandpaper glued on with B-adhesive tape. And the piece must be always elevated from the ground. Now we can check the result. Nice, smooth, precise. As it should be. Now I will take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe to this channel and to hit that bell icon. It helped me a lot. At the end, a piece of 1 mm balsa was glued to the roof. Here I spread the PVA because the surface was smooth. And did I already mention the pins? Okay, enough. You know the drill. For the windows I opted for a mini art product. Nothing special here. I cleaned the flashover with a hobby knife. Then some sanding with rough and fine sanding sticks. The windows were then glued to the frames using Tamiya extra thin cement. For the upper floor I decided to partly scratch build a two-part door. I used 2 windows from the kit and added 2 pieces of styrene to match the thickness of the kit parts. I drawed 2 openings on one styrene piece. Then I cut it out the openings with a hobby knife. I glued the 2 pieces together with extra thin cement. And I also added a smaller central piece in the middle of the openings. I used thin CA to make a strong main bond, but it happens all the time. Luckily, I have my spatula always on hand. Some sanding to make things even, and then I scribed some grooves to the lower part. Not bad, I think. At the end, the grooves were smoothed out with Tamiya Extra Thin. For the fence, I started with 2 stripes of 0.5 mm styrene. They should be longer and wider as needed. I marked points every 5 mm on one of them. Then I put the marked piece on the other and carefully glued only the ends. I pointed out all the marks with a sharp hobby knife. Then I proceeded to drilling with a 0.6 mm drill through both the pieces. The sides were carefully cut away to obtain a nice strip, using the drilled line as a guide. I used the actual balcony to cut the excess length. Be careful to leave the same length from the left and right hole to the left and right part of the balcony. Time for the 0.6 mm brass wire. Cut a piece and make it straight with a piece of hard wood. I used marks on the cutting mat to cut the wire to 25 mm long pieces. Use an old blade and do some rolling motion. And then you should insert the pieces through both holes. And this part was a pain in the ass. When cutting, you deform the brass a little, and this makes the wire hard to insert. But this deformation also helps the rods not to fall from the hole, most of the time. So, I aligned one part of the rods with the strip and blocked them with extra thin CA. Then I took a piece of, let's say, 20 mm wide balsa and used it as a jig to glue the other part. The rods were cut to length with cutters. And here we have our piece of fence. It looks cool, but the process is painful and long. I made the other 2 pieces and glued them on the main piece with Tamiya Extra Thin. At the end, another stripe was glued on top to hide the rods. I added some brackets to the bottom in order to elevate the fence from the ground. And here it is. I don't know what to say. It don't look bad, but I can say that I'm very happy with it. If there was a nice fence in the kit, I would use that one. But there was not, so my fence will do the job. My scratch building mojo was totally sucked out by the fence, so I opted for a mini art gutter. First, I treated those ejection marks with a round metal file. Then, some ordinary cleaning with sanding sticks and smoothing out with cement. At first, the elements were glued together with cement in order to have time to align them properly against a ruler. And then, the bond was ensured from inside with extra thin CA. The excess was taken away with a cotton swab. I marked the position of the mount on the ornament stripe. Then I drilled them out with a 1 mm drill bit. At the end, the hole was enlarged with the square metal file. And now we can test mount our gutter to the facade. I'm very happy with the result. Gianpaolo from Scientific Models gave me their 3D printed roof tiles, and I was blown away. Just look at those things. They come in 10 pieces sets and everyone is damaged differently. There are also small marks of animals on them. Amazing. The link to their shop is in the description. I quickly made a test. PVA glue them perfectly, so we have a lot of time to adjust the position. I also discovered that 5 mm is the raster to use. So I drawed the 5 mm grid on the balsa and also the end of the first row. When drawing this grid, always draw it from both sides. In this case, somewhere in the middle, there are two sections of 6 mm, but this will be not visible at the end. And here we go. Apply a small amount of PVA on the line, and then carefully put on the tile. Always check that you are going straight, and a piece a little off from time to time is welcome. For the second row, 2 points of glue are enough, because a part of the tile is not sitting on the balsa. I glued the end tiles with medium CA, and even ensured the bond with extra thin CA. I did this because I cut half of the tiles away with a fine saw. With the first row of cover tiles, 4 points of glue are needed. The process is the same. When you apply 2 or 3 pieces, take a brush and some water and wash the excess PVA away. And you continue this way. It's time consuming, but the result is great. I discovered that I don't have enough tiles, so I shortened the roof. 3 rows will be more than enough. But even then, there were not enough, so I will finish it in the next episode. And here we have it. I put the windows in just temporarily with a black background. After painting, I will do some shadow boxes and the glass. Also, the roof misses 40 tiles. The doors need some texture and the fence some putty and sanding. A lot of work for the next episode. Now, I need some days to prepare for my first performance on a modeling event in Pivka here in Slovenia. I want to kindly invite you. A scale modeling competition in a war museum. I think it will be great. In the meantime, please like, dislike, subscribe, comment, and yes, take a hit on that bell icon so you will be informed when new stuff arrives. Thank you for watching and stay tuned.